Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. If we haven't met yet, my name is Kelli Thompson. I'm an executive and leadership coach. I'm a speaker, and I'm also the author of Closing the Confidence Gap. You can see it over my shoulder right there, little guy. Closing the Confidence Gap, boost your peace, your potential, and your paycheck. So if you're joining me live today, or even if you're joining on replay, I would love to hear where you are joining in from. Tell me where you're located, what city, what state. Tell me whatever you would like me to know, because even though you may not be joining here live, you're probably watching the replay, and I will go back and I will engage with all of the comments. So today we're going to talk about 5 ways to advance from doer to leader. And the reason why I'm talking about this topic today is for 2 reasons. Number one, I'll be honest, I'm launching the second round of this course. So last fall, for the very first time, I launched this course called Advance from Doer to Leader. And the reason why I did was because this was a theme that not only I struggled with in corporate America when I got promoted for the first time, or even when I started to get promoted into higher levels of leadership. A couple of things struck me. First and foremost, I think sometimes we think that like this magic transformation is going to happen overnight, in that we get this new title and all of a sudden we're managing people and we're going to wake up and know how to give hard feedback. We're going to know how to manage our peers, people that used to be, sitting with us, just the day before, and we had no direct reporting relationship. The power dynamics hadn't changed. And, I think also too, as we accelerate into higher levels of leadership, and I especially see this with the clients that I coach, because I'm working with, everyone from director to chief level positions, is as we continue to accelerate into leadership, we have to be more strategic if we want to be in those roles, which means relinquishing some of the things that we do best, some of the things that actually got us promoted. And I think sometimes we don't realize how much that doing is part of our identity. And so when we have to delegate that and we have to watch other people struggle with the things that we've done really quick and really well, not only is it a complete mind trap, because we're like, if I'm not the one jumping in, doing the work, getting all the accolades, then who am I? And then we start to think, well, how do I add value if I'm not the one that's actually in producing all of this work? And so that's really where the birth of this course came from, because it was just a repeated theme that I saw over and over and over again with my clients. And so I wanted to spend time today, number one, to talk about 5 ways to shift from doer to leader, not only in honor of this course that's starting on September 24th, but because this is a really important topic. It's so important that I wrote a Harvard Business Review article about it. And this Harvard Business Review article was actually just featured in a new best practice book published by the Harvard Business Review called Psychological Safety. So let's get into it. 5 ways to advance from doer to leader. And I think while I do go into organizations and teach this to all genders, one thing that I want you to think about, if you are paying attention and you identify as female, or maybe you manage folks who do, is that women have an additional burden of what we call non-promotable tasks. Non-promotable tasks are things that we get asked to do, but don't necessarily contribute to our promotions, our pay. They don't show up in performance reviews. They're things that we get asked to do, like plan the office parties, take notes in the meeting, sit on like non-strategic subcommittees. These things take up our time and our energy, but they don't necessarily accelerate us to higher levels of leadership, while men tend to get these more strategic projects. And so I think for women who are looking to advance from, a high achiever to a more strategic leader, it's really important for us to think about how much work we are taking on and saying yes to that's keeping us labeled as unstrategic. So let's get into it. Let's get into the top 5 ways to advance from doer to leader. And way number 1 is, I'm just going to spell out the acronym LESS. Okay. And we'll start with the L, because we want to do more, lead more by doing less. So L, we need to learn why we say yes when we really should be saying no. And I often find that there's 4 reasons why people say yes when they should be saying no to things. I find number 1, there could be like a capability, achiever mindset. And so sometimes what people think is like, oh gosh, if I say no, people are going to think I'm not capable. I know for me, that's one that I often fall into. And feel free to comment, whether you're watching live or on replay. If one of these resonates with you, if all of them resonate with you, you just Let me know. I'm always curious where folks are at. The second mindset is the people-pleasing mindset. People think if I say no, people are going to get mad at me. People are going to get upset with me. The third reason why people say yes when they should say no is they kind of have this responsibility caretaker mindset. Like they feel the need to be responsible for everything, not let anything fall through the cracks. And so they think to themselves, well, if I say no, people are going to think I'm not responsible. I don't care for them. And then the last mindset is this perfectionist mindset, which is really interesting because the perfectionist mindset, in my observation, keeps people saying yes to look perfect. And then they stall as long as possible on delivery on everything until it's perfect. And so all of a sudden the work just like burgeons and it becomes unmanageable in this pursuit of perfection. So I'd be curious, tell us in the chat, whether you're watching live or watching it on replay, I'll come back and see it. Do you have the achiever mindset, the people pleaser mindset, the responsibility mindset, or the perfectionist mindset? For me, it was definitely the capability achiever mindset. I was always so scared that if I said no to something, people would think I wasn't capable. But I think as we all know, when we start believing this, not only does it keep us stuck in doing mode, but the other thing that happens is that actually the opposite becomes true. We start to say yes to all of these things, and I would say yes to all of these things. And then all of a sudden, because I'd overcommitted myself or I'd overcommitted my team, people saw us as looking not as capable because the work wasn't up to a certain quality. Maybe we were missing on our deliverables. And so I think sometimes it's really important to really notice and how sometimes we have this thought that, oh my gosh, if I say no, people are going to think this thing. Well, actually, the opposite can be just as true. So that's number one. We just want to do a little bit of an assessment and really think about, why is it that I say yes to these things when I really should be saying no? And what am I saying yes to that needs to be a no? The second tip to shift from doer to leader is the E. So we talked about the L, now we're at the E, which is to express our expectations and boundaries. I think sometimes we just don't know how to say no, or we have never really taught people intentionally how to treat us, especially as we are advancing from doer to leader, because as we continue to rise in the organization, especially if we've been with the organization for a while, it can be tempting for people who, used to manage us or used to be our peers to continue to see us in the same ways. They continue to give us the same projects. And so it's important to teach people how to use you in a new way. And this could look like something like, since my role has changed, I no longer work on that project, but I'd be happy to introduce you to John, who is taking over my old responsibilities. When I led training teams, folks would always want training to solve an issue. And so one of the things I had to learn how to do was to, set boundaries collaboratively so that my team wasn't overwhelmed with last minute requests. And that often looked like, thank you so much for thinking of us. Right now, we are working on building the sales training that needs to be launched next week. So unfortunately, we can't accommodate this request in such a short time frame. But I'd be happy to talk with you about a deliverable that would look, 2 months from now. How does that work for you and your team? Is that something you'd want to talk about? So first one, L, learn why you say yes when you should be saying no. Number two, second way to advance from doer to leader is the E, express your expectations and boundaries. You are always teaching people how to use you by what you say yes to and what you say no to. The third one, S, shift from doer to leader. This is the mindset shift. And I think sometimes the mindset shift is the hardest shift of all. And one of the things that I really work on with my clients is really asking ourselves is, are we going into things with a hero mentality and all save the day mentality, or a coach mentality? The difference between a hero mentality and a coach mentality is this: as a hero says, I'll come in and take over when mistakes are being made. A coach mentality, asks the person that's working in front of them, what would you have done differently next time? A hero mentality may instruct and tell, where a coach mentality asks a lot of questions. A hero mentality jumps in, rescues, sometimes when they notice that people are struggling, the hero in them is like, I can just do it better and faster, and I'm just going to come in and take over. Okay. And this is true. I've found in my life, whether I'm leading people or it's true at home too, when my daughter was at home, and she's 19 and I still have to hold myself back. But are we jumping in to save the day, to rescue people and soothe their pain because they're struggling and learning something new? Or as a coach, do we stand back and get comfortable with that discomfort that comes when folks struggle to learn? Because that's where the magic happens. I always say there's a difference between the hero energy and the coach energy. The hero energy is much more take charge, intervening energy. We're intervening a lot, whether it's with our ideas, our expertise, or our advice, where the coach like leadership energy is much more facilitative. It's like, I'm going to stand back and I'm going to facilitate results. I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to observe before I jump in. So that's the third way we shift from doer to leader, is to really make that mindset shift and those behavioral and belief shifts from doer to leader. The fourth way is to start delegating with low stakes tasks. Because so many leaders tell me, Kelli, I can't delegate things because people just make too many mistakes. Well, that might be true when you're delegating when the stakes are too high. I wouldn't, as a leader, I would never put someone who said they wanted presentation skills and put their first presentation to a big client. I would make their first presentation to me, and then their second presentation to the team, the third presentation also to the team, and maybe even the fourth, before the fifth one they finally get to the client. Why? Because as a leader, we should hope for mistakes. We should plan for mistakes, because that's where all of the learning happens. That's where the growth happens. And so if you're delegating something and you're worried about somebody making a mistake, my hunch is that the stakes aren't low enough. And so I want you to think about, what is a low stakes item I can develop or delegate to this person who wants to develop their skills, where it's actually going to be good if they make a couple mistakes, because we're going to facilitate a lot of learning in this process. And so I want you to start delegating with low stakes tasks. So let's just recap this whole lead more by doing less philosophy. The acronym is LESS, and it's 5 ways to advance from doer to leader. So way number 1 is we learn why we keep saying yes to things when we should say no. Way number 2 is we need to express our expectations and boundaries. We need to teach people how to use this in a new way. Way number 3 is we need to shift our mindsets from doer to leader. And that really comes from changing our energy from a hero, intervening like energy, to a coach like facilitative energy. Way number 4 is to start delegating with low stakes tasks. And way number 5 is, I actually am going to give you some homework. And this is your homework, is I want you to do a calendar audit. One of the best ways that we can shift from doer to leader is to change what is being demanded of us on our calendar. Because all too often, what I see when I'm working with my clients, even at the highest levels of leadership, they have meetings on their calendar that they've always attended because they've always attended them. And so what's happening is they have several of their direct reports in that meeting. And so number 1, they don't need to be there. And number 2, when they are there, they're the hippo in the room. They're the highest paid person's opinion. And this happened to me as well when I would attend meetings with my direct reports. My direct reports were fully capable of answering all the questions. But just because I was there, people would look at me and be like, are they right? And so that immediately took the pressure off. That immediately diminished their decision-making capability. And so I want you to do a calendar audit, and I want you to look at meetings that you should no longer be in because you have someone on your team there that is fully capable of handling this meeting, and you can communicate that. I want you to look at your calendar audit. I want you to look at tasks that are draining you. What are you still doing that's draining you that honestly someone else on your team would be thrilled to learn that skill? Or maybe you could even outsource it to a vendor or a task list or a task person or a virtual assistant. And what have you said yes to that you're actually feeling really resentful about? Resentment is a huge clue that something is out of alignment with your skills and your talents and your values. So that is your homework. I want you to look over the last 45 days or look ahead to the next 45 days and do a calendar audit. And I want you to ask yourself, based on some of these parameters, what can you dump? What can you delegate? And if you can't dump it and you can't delegate it, what could you possibly outsource? And I want you to notice how freeing up some of that time can now open your calendar where you can spend more time on strategic pursuits, more time, talking about some of the strategic developments that you've been tasked to do in your new role, more time thinking about your 3 to 5 year plan, more time thinking about your competitors and what they're doing, or anything else that you are tasked with in a more strategic level in your role. So that was 5 ways to advance from doer to leader. And if this is something that you're like, yes, this is me, I need this. Like I said in the beginning, my course launches September 24th, and it's really meant for high achievers up to mid-level working managers who are looking to, get out of the weeds, getting out of jumping in and saving the day, and really learning a lot of more delegation and coach-like techniques to help them take what's draining them off of their calendars, learn how to be better coaches to their team. I'm actually going to teach the coaching skills that I use to help them rise to a more strategic level of leadership. And so that's a group course. We're going to meet 4 times along with the 4 live classroom sessions. You're going to get 2 group coaching sessions with me. My public courses are for women only. And I recognize that this is not a problem that just women leaders have. And so if this is something that you're interested in bringing to your entire team, when I go in and I work with corporations, I train the entire audience, no matter their gender. And so when I go into organizations, this Advance from Doer to Leader course is something I can absolutely bring into your organization as well, and work with your entire team on leveling up their coaching skills, delegating, getting out of the weeds, so that they can rise to that strategic level of leadership that you need them to be, so they can drive results for your organization. Because that is my hunch, is you promoted this person so they'd be strategic and get results and not still be doing all the things that they did as an individual contributor. So thank you so much for joining me live or watching this on replay. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I'm going to come back and answer them, or you can send me a DM about anything I talked about, any of my courses, working with me, whatever that looks like. I always love hearing from everyone, but thank you for taking about 16 and a half minutes after your day to learn 5 easy ways that you can advance from doer to leader. And if you want a recap of this, I'll be sending this out. So make sure that you are on my email list to get the recap of this, which is just at kellyraythompson.com/subscribe. Let's see, if you're not a leader yet and don't officially plan to be, but I need these types of skills to lead a project, for instance, is this still for me? So this is a really great question, Tithi. And the short answer is yes, because what I found, and here's a question you can ask yourself, is do you have to influence people in your organization? And even though maybe you're not a formal leader where you manage people, I always say you're a leader in any place you influence others. And if you are a project manager that is taking on things that you shouldn't be taking on, and you should be delegating and influencing other teams to be doing this work instead of taking over, this can be a very valuable skill set for you to learn. And I don't know about you, some of you might comment in the chat, but I think that managing people who don't report to you is incredibly harder than managing people who do. Like, the ability to influence across a matrix organization is hard. And so what you would learn if you don't directly manage people is, one, we would still, in the first course, we really focus on getting intentional with your time, because that's the biggest barrier I see to advancing from doer to leader, is people's energy is scattered and they're just not intentional. Okay. So we get intentional about where they should be spending and managing their time. The second course, then we really talk about great coach-like techniques. So how do we give feedback to people? How do we coach people? How do we ask people how things are going? How do we get deeper responses for people? Because one of the things I find is that people think they're coaching, but they're not. They're just giving better advice, and they aren't even solving the real problem. And so I teach my own coaching techniques to get to the root of the problem. The third session would be a lot about delegating, knowing how and when and what to delegate. We get specific on that. And then the fourth session is all about kind of upping your influence as a leader by leading by your values. And so that's kind of unpacks the course. And so I'll drop the link too, but it's kellyraythompson.com/doer to leader. And you can go read the agenda and see if it's for you. And then DM me or email me if you have any other questions. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much for everyone who joined or comes back to comment on the replay. And again, send me a DM if you have any other questions. And I hope to hear from everyone soon. Have a good day.